fans, welcome back to Room 237, and I'm back in the horror setting, because it's going to be a horror movie review. This is a movie that came out, I think it was sometime last year, it was definitely made last year, that I remember when it came out because it got a lot of hype, and it was all over Facebook at least. And I had no intentions of seeing it because it was on Shudder, which I don't have but would very much like to have. It's a Shudder original film, and like I said, got a lot of hype, and just I could tell by the trailer it was not a film I was going to be interested in. I'm just not into that kind of film. And then yesterday or the day before, I was at Walmart. I happened to see it for like $7, and when I saw the quote from a review on the cover, I was like, well, now I gotta check it out because there's no way that's true. But it is Shudder's 2020 film, Host. And yeah, I saw scariest film in the past decade, and I thought, bullshit, there's no way. There's no way a Zoom footage film can be the scariest of the past decade. Because I will be one to say that the past decade we've had, from 2010 to 2019 or 20, was a very great year for horror, whether people like to admit it or not. You know, there's some people that say all modern horror is garbage, trash, dumpster fire, like automatically. Whether because they hate modern movies in general, or because a lot of films that came out in the past decade were very well received and had a lot of hype behind them, and people just hate that in general. But it just, when I look at horror of the past decade, I mean, The Witch, loved, probably my favorite of the past decade. I loved Lighthouse, Get Out, Babadook. I'll even give credit to Hereditary, because even though I hate the ending to Hereditary, I do think it is a little overrated, still a great horror movie. Lots of movies. So, and then after seeing it, I still have to say it's definitely not the scariest. A pandemic-era poltergeist. The genre phenomenon of 2020. Alright. Now, some people are calling this found footage. I won't go that far, because it can't really be compared to movies like As Above, So Below, or even the Paranormal Activities, or Grave Encounters, or anything like that. It's like this new POV footage or desktop footage or whatever, because it is all from the perspective of someone's screen, laptop, phone, whatever. So the only other horror movies that it can be compared to would be the two Unfriended films. And I've not seen Dark Web yet. I've heard it's better. I did see the first Unfriended, and I hated it. There is the movie Searching, which is not a horror film, but I heard that was actually really good. That's all from the perspective of someone's screen. But while Unfriended was Skype, this is all Zoom, which I never used Zoom. I've never even used Skype. But Zoom, I guess, is the sort of video chat, streaming, whatever, that people have started to use quite a bit since the initial outbreak of COVID. A lot of people have, school, work, doctor's appointments, any kind of meeting or conference they've had with Zoom. And it's not like this is a corona or COVID or lockdown, quarantine horror film. It just happens to take place during that time. Because it only makes a few notes of it. Like, it's only briefly mentioned, and we see one person wearing a mask very briefly at the end. And this version that I have does have a reversible cover, which, if this was a better movie, I might flip it, but I'm keeping it like this because it is... It's a movie that is better made and more watchable than Unfriended. I can give it that. But that's not saying much because Unfriended sucked ass. And I think this better suits what the movie is, so I'm just going to leave it like that. There are some positives that I can give. I mean, it's only 56, 57 minutes. There's like an extra 7 or 8 minutes tacked on at the end with the actual actors and crew doing a Zoom conference. Everyone in it sort of plays themselves. No one really gives their last name. We just see their first names. Everyone has their own name. It was directed by Rob Savage, who, I guess he originally made a short film that was on Zoom. He set up a prank where he was going to check out a noise and then some scary face popped out and it went viral. And I think it was Shudder saw it, reached out to him. And for the time the film was conceived all the way till it was delivered to Shudder was 12 weeks. So thought up, written, cast, pre-production, filmed, post-production, everything. 12 weeks. And I would actually say the behind-the-scenes stuff is far more admirable and interesting than the actual movie itself. But I will say 56 minutes is definitely more of an appropriate runtime for a film like this. Like, Unfriended should not have been feature length, like an hour and a half. There's just not much there. And the story, which I'll use very loosely, is very simple. I mean, it's 6 friends. They contact... Well, because then there's the seance woman and then the friend that wasn't there for the seance, but he was there before and after. It was Emma, Gemma, Caroline, Radina, Haley. They were like the main ones. And Teddy. Yeah, so in total there's like 7 people. And the first 10-15 minutes we get to know the characters. Like, they're all contacting each other through Zoom, and then they call the one woman that conducts the seance. And then it's your typical paranormal film fare, found footage type fare. And I will say the scares that are in this, even though it's nothing we haven't seen before, it's all literally the same shit from every Paranormal Activity, from Unfriended, all the same kind of scares. But most of it is way better executed in this. In fact, there are some jump scares that actually do kind of work. In fact, some of them, it's a jump scare while other things are going on. So it's not like it's luring you in with this purposeful silence just to go bleh. Like, boo, scary. Even some of the more original scares you can probably pick out of some Paranormal Activity movie. There is one aspect that I thought was pretty clever that I actually cannot think if I've ever seen it before. And that is this one girl, Emma, who's the one on the cover. She's playing with these filters. You know, you also get them on like Snapchat, whatever. Like filters that makes you look like a dog or have makeup. There's one that looks like the translucent mask with makeup on it, kind of like the Alice, Sweet Alice mask. And she walks in her living room, and there's just that filter just right in midair. But we don't see any, like, it's not on anything. So it's like the camera picked up a face to put on it. And of course, she's like breathing heavy because she's scared, gets near it, and then it just kind of turns. I was like, that's probably the one original scare that I can give it. But I mean, everything else is pretty much the same. I mean, all the way down to doors slamming and even the whole kitchen, all the cupboards and its contents opening and coming out. Someone being dragged on the floor into another room with the door shutting. It's all pretty much the same shit. So they do the seance, and this one girl, Gemma, fakes a reaction. You know, she starts crying and saying, I'm hearing a noise, I hear a voice, I'm hearing this name Jack, this kid from school. And then they lose contact with the woman conducting the seance, which I think her name was Salin. It was a weird name. It doesn't say it on the back. I think it was like Salin. Yes, Salin. Salin Baxter as Salin. Which this was weird because her call gets cut out, but it looks like something falls on her or attacks her. They even address it. They're like, what was that? What just happened? What happened to her? But then they call her and she's fine. And they never ask, like, hey, what was that spooky thing that looked like it just happened? But they start, and so then they lose contact with her, and then the girl Gemma, you know, kind of smiles. Is like, it was fake. I was faking it. Which I will say, the acting is very well done. The acting is much better than Unfriended. And the only reason why I'm making so many connections to Unfriended is because it's literally the only other film that I can compare it to. I can't compare it to other found footage films because it's not really found footage. It's like this screen POV or screen footage or whatever. But the acting is very authentic. Everyone does I'll say superb job. And they were all directed from their, like, through Zoom. Like the director, Rob Savage, he had to direct everyone through Zoom. And everyone had to do their own effects. There's like this program they all watched, or there was like some sort of class or whatever that taught them how to do like paranormal effects. So they all had to pull off their own lighting, their own sound, their own effects from their own home. And so I definitely admire the film for how it was made. You know, that he pretty much had to direct these 7 people, all of which, you know, I would say 6 of them all had to do their own effects and act scared and make spooky shit happen. He had to direct them through Zoom. I imagine that wasn't too easy. And yeah, you can say it's just as timely as Unfriended, because, you know, Unfriended was Skype, and a lot of things that they were doing, a lot of things that we saw on their computer might not be around in the near future. When and if the world ever does get back to normal, we're always going to remember this as that window of time of lockdown, of quarantine. So it does date the movie, but I guess this is such a significant time in our history now. But it's definitely not like a corona or pandemic themed horror movie, which there are those out there. I mean, they make no... The whole reason why they're doing this is because the impression I got is that they're all kind of bored during lockdown and they want to have like a girls' night but do something exciting. So that's why they're doing this seance. And I mean, this one girl, Radina, we get the idea that she's not in the best relationship. So, like, her boyfriend goes in the other room. And then once they close the portal of the seance and they think everything's getting back to normal, she goes in the bathroom and calls him, and his phone is in there, but he's not. He's, like, gone. And it does start off kind of small. Like, the girl Emma, she has, like, a wine glass right here. It shatters. When the main girl, Haley, when she's yelling at Gemma for faking the encounter, she's giving her shit and she gets pulled back in her chair across the room. She does do the thing where she has this Polaroid camera, which I'm guessing just so she can have a flash, but also so she can get a fully produced picture instantly to hold up to the camera to see something. And one of the themes of the scares is hanging. Like, this one girl, Caroline, she hears a noise in her attic. And we all know what's going to happen. You're going to go up, camera's going to pan around, and we're going to see something. Except she does it with a selfie stick. And we just see like two ghostly feet hanging as she pans her camera around. But also, she has like this screensaver or this background where it's like a loop of her walking through her bedroom, combing her hair and texting. She makes the joke that it's like, oh, I'm with someone because I'm lonely during lockdown. I'm mentioning the lockdown. So then eventually when they lose contact, it's just that loop of her that she recorded. Then eventually it cuts to her doing like this exorcist, like bashing her head up against the keyboard. She's standing in her living room, and all of a sudden, like in the movie Quarantine with the firefighter, the boyfriend just... And then she goes to run out, but she gets dragged. We see the camera like looking up at the ceiling. And then when it stops, there's like a thump sound with a drop of blood on the screen. Most of the movie, Emma is under her blanket. And this guy, Teddy, like he was there in the beginning. He wasn't there for the seance, I think, because we get the idea his wife's kind of bossy. Made him get off Zoom so they could have dinner together. And then he comes in when pretty much Emma's the only one left. Because Gemma puts on a mask and leaves. Haley gets Paranormal Activity dragged into another room. So then Teddy comes back on and it's just Emma and she's under her blanket. And these are some of the jump scares that I do give credit to, because it's not this purposeful setup where it's just long, dull silence with a loud noise. Because he does see something, and then, the camera's shaking. He's kind of breathing hard, and things are going nuts, and there's faces popping up at him. Which I will say, the faces are pretty creepy looking. They do look different. Can't really describe them. They're kind of purple and zombified looking. And then he's outside, and his wife is by the pool. She gets ripped up in the air, and then she just and falls in the water. Nicely done effect. I will say, for all these people having to pull these effects off themselves, never having done it before, because they had to learn how to pull these effects off. Effects like that, actually, I will give credit. They were pulled off well. I guess the more I think about it, the more credit I can give it. It just, maybe I'm not into this style of film. I'm not even the biggest found footage guy. I mean, my favorite found footage film, Cannibal Holocaust, does not count, because only half of it is found footage. I'd have to say my favorite one is Blair Witch, the original. I do think that is the most effective and scary found footage film. I know people hate it, either because it's fake, which is stupid, or because you don't see anything, which is kind of the whole point. But I hate Paranormal Activity. I hate Grave Encounters. As Above, So Below was all right. But whatever this is, I'm just not the biggest fan of. But I do give credit to the acting, the effects, the short amount of time it was made. It doesn't make a big deal about pandemic and lockdown. It's mentioned very briefly. Of course, it does end the same way, because the ones we're left with is Gemma and Haley. Gemma breaks in Haley's apartment. She's walking through. She finds her. And, well, first, she's standing in the kitchen. We see a glass bottle hit her in the head. And then the laptop gets flung to the floor. She gets up. She carries the laptop around. Finds Haley hiding under a desk. And then she grabs her Polaroid. And she keeps taking pictures. Which is kind of like in Saw, when we see how Adam was abducted. Wow, brain fart. And then it ends with, she really kind of pulls in. And when she takes the picture, there's a face, and it says, the time has run out, or meeting has run out. I guess it does go at a good enough pace. The only thing really keeping me from saying, or I actually don't really know if this is a rant. This might be a case where I just want to dislike a film just because it is like Unfriended, and it does say scariest of the past decade. That I do disagree with, but the more I think about it, the more I do have to give credit. I do give credit to the acting. The acting's very well done. The fact they were directed from and did everything on their own from their own home, as far as lighting, sound, effects, all well done. Yeah, the scares are nothing really new, save for that one with the filter on nothing. Oh, and then she just kind of takes flour, throws it everywhere, which she doesn't stick to anything, but she then sees footprints, and that's when she runs and hides under the blanket. Oh, she tries to get out the window, and her laptop falls, and then we just see her kind of onto a picnic table. So, I can give this movie a lot of nods. I can give it a lot of credit. Just... and I will say that the whole gimmick of being this screen perspective does work better here, because it does have a better reason. It does have a better backdrop behind it, which is lockdown. both in the context of real life and within the film itself. Whereas Unfriended was just a gimmick. So, I think as much as I want this to be a rant, maybe it's just because it's not my kind of genre or my kind of format or style of film, but I do give all the credit I can, or all the credit there is, to the behind the scenes and how it's made. I don't really know how I honestly feel about the film. It's definitely of these kinds of movies, and even more recent found footage films, it is far superior. This might be a confusing review because it sounds like I'm praising it, but like I want to rant on it. And I don't really know how I feel about it. Probably, I went into it thinking I was going to hate it, and I was pleasantly surprised. I guess the best way I can sum up how I feel about it is everything in it is nothing we haven't seen before, but it is pulled off a lot better. I guess that's the best way I can put it. But, yeah, this review is almost half as long as the movie, which is another plus. They knew they didn't really have 90 minutes of material. They didn't stretch it out with the stupid Paranormal Activity, just, shots of nothing for long periods of time. They kept it tight and moving, which I appreciate. So, Host, even though it's not my kind of film, it does deserve some credit for how it's made and how well the effect of everything and the gimmick is pulled off. But scariest of the past decade, or the 100 on Rotten Tomatoes, I have to disagree with that. I'm sorry, but that is Host 2020, the pandemic screen perspective footage lockdown horror film. So thank you for watching.